This is Roll Call for this edition of African Drums. The African drums are sounding.
Good evening. Welcome to African Drums, the television organ of the Cuffy 250 Committee, an organization dedicated to the empowerment of the African Guyanese communities through education and the encouragement of self-activity. I am Elsie and I will be your host for this evening's program. Part of Cuffy 250's mission is to encourage the revitalization of African Guyanese communities. This includes economic revitalization. For us in Cuffy 250, a strong economic foundation is pivotal to the overall development of communities. Our visits to communities have revealed a shrinking of the economic base, which is manifested in a decline in small businesses, high unemployment, and a lack of circulation of money in the communities, as well as other deficiencies. This trend has to be altered if the African Guyanese communities are going to find their feet again. On today's program, we will speak with someone who is concerned about these issues and is doing something in his community to address them. George Abrams is a Cuffy 250 member and a Buxtonian by birth and socialization. He is a certified public accountant and a businessman who shares his time between the USA and Guyana. Mr. Abrams, welcome to African Drums.
Thank you very much.
Cuffy 250 is not the first organization that you've belonged to. You were once a member of ASCRIA, the African organization founded by Brother Usi Koyana and others in the 1960s. Talk to us a bit about the impact of ASCRIA on the African Guyanese community and your own activities in London where you worked at the time.
Well, I became a member of ASCRIA during the 60s when it was formed here in Georgetown. My cultural development in African work began in Buxton as a kid, and it was difficult for me to associate with ASCRIA when it was formed in Georgetown and become a part of it in Linden. I became the president of ASCRIA in the 60s at a very tiny age of 24. I worked with the community in doing a lot of activities in developing the African community. ASCRA stands for the African Society for Cultural Relationship with Independent Africa. One of the things we are concerned about is the education of our African community. As a result of that, we started an adult class in Wismar. And the adult class was held at the school building there in Wismar, one of the well-known school buildings, and many of the teachers who volunteered their time were once students at the County High School in Buxton. Several subjects were taught. These consist of English, math, bookkeeping, economics, commerce, history, British Constitution, Swahili, to name a few of the subjects that were taught there. Many of the students also took what at that time was known as the LLC exam, and because of that foundation, that educational foundation that they got from the ASCRA adult educational class, I know a few of them who went to the United States, were able to take the GED exam and qualify to enter several universities in the United States. ASCRA was also involved in fundraising. We had a debate competition team in which we entered the Patrick Dagan debating competition here in Georgetown on 3 occasions, and that was the final of the Patrick Dagan debating competition. We also were involved in the community work. I remember clearly when the market was burnt and they rebuilt a new market, and we came on the scene to ensure that those people who lost their stall during the burning of that market were given the first right to receive another stall. We had many demonstrations. I can remember when Dr. Martin Luther King died, we held one of the largest candlelight demonstration at Wismar, and we held a meeting at the Wismar flat shop. We were also involved in distributing of literatures to the community and holding a lot of cultural events. There were many leaders from African nations that came to Guyana and found their way by invitation to Wismar, and they were entertained there in several cultural events. So that's in a nutshell is what we did at Linden during the days of ASCRA.
Okay, thank you. You are a Buxtonian. Buxton is known for its political activism and the many national political activists, politicians, scholars, and educators that it has produced. What is it about that village that makes it the center of permanent resistance and creativity?
Well, we have to give praise to our forefathers who, because of their wisdom, because of their knowledge, because of their know-how, felt that it was necessary to purchase a village just after slavery. And this they did. It is said that Buxton is one of the first villages to be purchased just after slavery. But in purchasing the village, they laid the foundation for many of the scholars that came after them. There are so many scholars in Buxton that over the years have done so much to improve the state of the lives of Buxtonians. And it's not my duty to name them here today. I'm sure they are well known, and they are well known for their contribution to the village. But we need to understand that because of their contribution, we here today have benefited from that. Whether we are politicians, whether we are professionals, whether we are teachers, we have benefited from what our foreparents have done, the groundwork that they have laid over the years. And as Buxtonians, we need to be able to take on the task of carrying on the work that they have done. It is an ongoing process. It's not something that we need to forget. It's a daily job that we need to do. We need to know the names of those people who have contributed to the upkeeping and on the ongoing progress of Buxton in the past. They are well-known people. And it is said that if we don't tell our story, who will tell it for us? We have to continue to tell our story. We have to continue to let our children know the roles that our foreparents have played. We have to continue to let our children know the role that our present leaders are playing. And we have to continue to let them know that they have to tell their story over and over and over again.
Okay. Mr. Abrams, in addition to your activism as part of ASCRIA back then and now Cuffy 250 committee, you personally are a successful individual. What then makes you so concerned about the deteriorating condition in African Guyanese communities?
My success could not have been achieved if it wasn't my knowledge of what the African community could do and have done in the past. My success is not a success that I've developed without help. There are people within the African community that have helped me. And if I'm going to enjoy that assistance, then I need to give back some of it that I've been able to enjoy and achieved over the years. I look to Guyana and I see the disparity between one group of Guyanese as against the other group of Guyanese, and I wonder why that is so. And we know that over the years that disparity becomes wider. It becomes wider. We see in the villages where the disparity exists, there is no government assistance in some of the villages that are meaningful. The villages needs more things that they can use to grow. And if we're not going to get it from the government, then we need to find it among ourselves. We need to do things that will assist the village to grow. And over the years I've given quite a lot of advice. Some of these advices I've been taking, some of them I've not. But it doesn't mean that we have to be despondent, or I have to be despondent. It's a continuous work to help the village to grow and strive.
Okay. You spoke about Buxton as being one of the first free villages bought after slavery by the strategic planning of black ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think has caused the slippage in the villages in particular after all of these were once thriving economic centers after slavery?
Well, there's so many things that contribute to that slippage. One of them is a lack of businesses in the village, lack of businesses. And when I speak of businesses, I'm speaking of small businesses. One of them is a lack of or being unable or not being willing to support businesses within the village. One of them is the lack of education. When I say education, I mean education in the education in the field of business. One of them is poor drainage within the village. which means that people find it difficult to go back to the land. Agriculture, when I was growing up, was a very, very main industry. Not industry, but main self-supporting areas of people in the village, farmers. And those things are lacking today. And if we are to concern ourselves about the growth in the village, then certain industries will have to go into the village, small businesses, small businesses that can employ 1, 2, or 3 persons. I myself am working on a small business in Buxton, and that is on its way and should be finished by the end of this year. And the facilities to hold that business should be completed by the end of this year. And that small business is to be able to establish a small sewing establishment, and first of all to be able to employ people, a few people, preferably I know there will be women who could be employed to do sewing. And our initial market will be that of school uniform, although we plan on extending that market to other areas as we grow. But this is the sort of things that the village needs. I can remember being involved in the health center that was built several years ago, and we started raising money for building that health center in Washington, D.C. There's a group that was formed known as JBMSI, JB Medical Services Inc., and we raised enough money to build the health center. Today that health center is operating in Buxton. As a part of Simbox, we were able to do things to give scholarships to children who qualify at the CXC exam in those days, to assist their parents to send them to secondary school. So education is very critical in the development of business in the village, and also experience. And we need to teach our villagers how to get that experience and how to be able to motivate themselves to be able to become good business owners.
Okay, you spoke about small businesses and how they can provide assistance. For example, your small business that you're working on in Buxton, how it will provide employment for persons in the area. In what other ways can small businesses lead to revitalization beyond employment?
Small businesses are able to bring together a community not only by offering employment, but also by being able to galvanize a community. The owners of small businesses can be involved in civic organizations within the community. Small businesses can also teach people how to operate not only their business but how to operate other organizations within their community. People seeing small business existing and getting a knowledge of how those small businesses are existing will learn from the existence of those small businesses. It's a combination of several aspects of the running of a small business, not only in providing employment, but the operation of a small business that we can benefit from as a community.
Okay. For those viewers who are just joining us, you are watching African Drums, the television organ of the Cuffy 250 Committee, an organization dedicated to the empowerment of the African Guyanese community through education and the encouragement of self-activity. I'm Elsie Harry, and my in-studio guest is Mr. George Abrams, Cuffy 250 Committee member. We are discussing economic revitalization in African Guyanese communities. Mr. Abrams, one of the problems people seem to have is raising the capital to start these small business enterprises. Do you have any advice on how this capital can be raised?
My experience with small businesses in the United States, and of course my frame of reference is the United States, and as a CPA I work with several small businesses there, quite a lot of them. And they look towards their own resources to raise capital. They may look towards family members to raise capital. And the same can be done here. It depends on the size of the business. But we first will have to look inwardly to be able to raise that capital and not outwardly. Because it is always said that if you don't put your own money into the starting of that business, then you will have no concern whatsoever with the continuance of that business. So if you make the sacrifice to put your own money in the starting of that business, then that's a successful start. Once you start that business, then seeking outside funds should be a necessity for the growth of that business and not to start the business. If you start a supermarket that is small with 2 employees and you find that there's a way to grow that supermarket and you cannot come up with the necessary funds, then you will have to seek outside assistance. And going to a bank for capital is to be able to satisfy that bank that you're able to repay that loan. And to satisfy that bank that you're able to repay that loan means that you have to have financial projections and financial statements that will show that over the years your business has been successful and that you're in a position to repay that loan. I know a lot of people have said that we have gone to bank for startup monies, and my experience has told me that banks do not lend money for startup. Very few. Startup monies come from your own personal injection. There was a few years ago when I encouraged the setting up of a credit union in the village of Buxton and other villages, in which we can encourage people overseas to make contributions to that credit union. And I'm not talking about free contributions, I'm talking about making deposits, investments into that credit union. Because today in America you put money into America banks, despite of how much money you have, you're getting 0.05. I've seen businesses who have put over $100,000 in the bank and at the end of the year they're getting about $10 interest. Okay? So we need to be able to take some of that money and invest it. I'm always been told that money sitting in a bank doesn't grow as fast as if it's invested, especially invested in a business. So we need to encourage some of our brothers and sisters overseas to make investment in businesses here in Guyana, where I'm sure the return of the investment will be a lot more than what they're getting with that money sitting in a savings account or a checking account in America.
Okay. It has been said that even after capital has been gathered to start these small businesses, one of the biggest criticisms of African Guyanese is that they don't support African Guyanese businesses. Do you agree with this?
To a certain extent I do, and I have my own experience in that. But if African Guyanese businesses are to be supported, they need to know that there are a few things that they have to do. Our people have a very small amount of disposable income to live on. And if we are going to use that disposable income to survive, then we are going to look at the shop or at the area in which we can get more for our money. We're not going to spend our money foolishly, because we need to exist. And African businesses need to know that. They need to know that they have to be competitive with other businesses out there. Consumers also need to know that if African businesses are competitive, then they need to support them. Of course, if you're going to spend $1,000 from Buxton to Georgetown to buy things, and you can get them in Buxton at $1,000 more, then it's best to spend that money in Buxton, because that $1,000 is your passage and you have to be walking around. And by supporting your business within your own community, you're creating jobs within your own community. My experience with that has been, over the years, we have a feeding program in Buxton in which we feed several elderly persons. At the beginning of this year, we fed a little under 400 persons. At that feeding program, we gave each one of them 2,000 Guyana dollars. And if my math is right, plus food and other things, if my math is right, that's about $1 million Guyana dollars that is distributed during that day. And in my investigation, very little of that money is spent in Buxton, because there are not enough businesses in Buxton to support the spending of that amount of money. That may be just one day. But what about during the years? I've encouraged people from Washington and other places in the United States, Buxtonians, to support their families here, and I'm sure a lot of them spend money to support their families. If it's even $100 a month, that's $20,000 a month. But we have no experience of that money being spent in the village. So we need to have businesses in the village, but those businesses of themselves must be able to encourage consumers in the village to spend their money there. And one of the ways is by looking at their prices.
Okay.
Price competition.
Okay. We are now coming to the end of the program, but I cannot end without asking you to speak about someone who I know you admire greatly, Brother Elsie Koyana, who was one of the founders of ASCREA, which you were a part of earlier. What makes Brother Elsie Koyana so important and special? Can you tell us very briefly?
I wish if I can do it briefly. Brother Elsie has been my mentor. You have to understand that my education in Buxton started with Brother Elsie. I didn't have an opportunity to go to a nice school. in Buxton. And when Brother UC started the high school, after speaking to my mother and telling her that I want to do the GC exam, I went to Brother UC and he said, why not come here and you can teach bookkeeping and then you will get free lessons. At that time I used to work on the sugar estate. When I work in the evening, I go to the school during the day. And I was able to study and got my 5 O-levels. With that 5 O-levels, I was able to move to Linden, the Demerara Bauxite Company, and got a job there, and continue my studies by myself, and was able to acquire my 3 A-levels. But it was always my intention to go overseas to study. But even before then, when I got married, Brother UC took me to church. That's how close we were. When I formed the ASCRA, when I became a part of ASCRA at Linden, he was there with me as the leader of ASCRA. He took me to church, he encouraged me, even with the debating competition. Whenever we need someone to listen to us, he was there. Whenever there was any article to be written, he was there. We can always call on him for assistance. He will come up to Linden and be a part of our cultural evenings. He will come up and visit the educational schools. When I went to the United States and he came there, I was a part of the WPA with him. So he has always been a part of my life, even today. And I owe a lot to him for the educational upliftment that I've been able to make over my life. And I'm glad that I'm able to say this to not only to Buxtonians, but to other Guyanese that are listening to this program. You know, I've not been able to say it publicly, I've been able to say it to a few persons. But this is a very relevant occasion for me to be able to say how important Brother UC has been to my life and to my success in life.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Abrams, for being on the show and for speaking to us about economic revitalization in African Guyanese communities and for giving us some insight on Brother UC Koyana and the impact that he has made on your life. Thank you, viewers, for staying with us. This has been African Drums, the television organ of the Cuffy 250 Committee, an organization dedicated to the empowerment of the African Guyanese community through education and the encouragement of self-activity. We would like to hear from you. Please send us an email at cuffy250gy@gmail.com if you have questions or comments. Please also donate to the cause. Please like our Facebook page, Cuffy250, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for videos of the show. It's Cuffy250. Thank you for watching. I am Elsie Harry. Please join us next week.